Howdy, YouTube. This is Steven, and I'm back with a book review, aka a book analysis, of a book titled Primates of Park Avenue by Wednesday Martin. And here's the book and its cover. All right, so here's the front cover, and here's the back. So I discovered this book while I was browsing the internet, and I read up a little bit about the book, and I decided to read the book. So I purchased the book, read the book, and I really enjoyed the book. So this is part of the reason why I'm doing a book analysis of this body of work. Okay, so when I read like the introduction, that really just captured my attention and made me want to read even more. Um, let's see. If I remember, basically the introduction was just going over the author's life and how they got to the point where they're at now when they're in the Upper East Side. Well, when Wednesday is in the Upper East Side. The author's name, her pen name is Wednesday Martin, but her real name is Wendy Martin. And really it's Dr. Wendy Martin and Dr. Wednesday Martin. But nevertheless, the introduction pretty much just goes over the author's life and how she got to the point where she's about to move to the Upper East Side. So I'm like, okay, there's some interesting stuff up in here, you know. And she also references throughout the book like other popular researchers like Jane Goodall and some other people she references too, but definitely Jane Goodall. Also, Margaret Mead, Jared Diamond, Sarah Hardy. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. It's Hardy. I thought that was a typo at first, but I'm like, oh, that's her name, I guess, because it kept repeating throughout the book. But I'm like, can somebody buy me a vowel? I think I need a vowel. But and also one more, well, a lot more, but one more I want to mention. Bronislaw. Let me see how to pronounce this guy's name. I know his last name is Milanowski. His first name is Bronislaw, I think. Well, I'll pronounce his last name. Malinowski. So yeah, she references like a lot of different works throughout her work. Her work, her research. And I'm like, okay, I get why she's doing that because, she got to give the book some academic credit here. And I think this book is kind of like anthropology light or pop anthropology. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a slight against the author and her work. I actually think that's a good thing because it kind of helps bring it in, bring anthropology into the mainstream more by making making it a bit more accessible to the masses versus, okay, you have to have a PhD in order to understand this, and ultimately that's not the point, elitism is not the point, we're so, as anthropologists and people who are interested in it or whatever, I think ultimately it's just supposed to be accessible, but sometimes, people get elitist, so that's why you get all the bogged down jargon. But another story for another day. But let me get back to business. All right. So after the introduction, we get into the first chapter of this book. And the first chapter of this book is titled, it's French, so forgive my pronunciation, but I think it's pronounced Comme il faut. And that pretty much translates into something along the lines of how it should be done or how it's done, or also as it should be. And it's basically the definition is proper in keeping with etiquette or social standards. So in this chapter, Wednesday, she's trying to search for an apartment, And I really like this was an eye opener for me because I never searched for an apartment in New York, so I didn't know about the process. But like you, sometimes it's easier to actually pay someone to help you search for an apartment, depending on how the market is, because there's so many people who want an apartment, but it's not enough to go around. And also, Wednesday and her husband wanted a certain type of apartment in a certain area. They wanted to be on the Upper East Side. I think they were moving from like the downtown area to the Upper East Side, and Wednesday was pretty much searching for the apartments by herself because her husband was working. And what Wednesday would do, she would just kind of feel like search for the apartments and then narrow it down to a couple of choices. And then once she's narrowed it down to a couple of choices, her and her husband will look at the apartment together and see, okay, um, do we want this or not? And also, her husband recommended an apartment hunter. I don't know the exact name of it, but an apartment hunter or a real estate agent to help her because I think by herself she wasn't getting anywhere. It was too many choices or a lot of issues going on. So the real estate agent who helped him sell his previous real estate, like he called her up and they got together and her and Wednesday went apartment hunting together. And I think her name is, I forgot her name, something kind of like, you know, Eastern European. Um, but let's see. Okay, her name is Inga, and she's actually of Danish origin, so Scandinavian. You know, my bad. But nevertheless, so Inga helps Wednesday find an apartment, and ultimately they find the apartment that they want. But the process was pretty interesting in my opening. Like me, I never lived in New York. I'm not from New York, you know, so I don't know about that. But it was like, hey, wow, that's how things go in New York, apparently. Because for me, I'm like, is it really necessary to help, like, to have someone find an apartment for you? But I guess it is because the market is really tough. At least at that time, they were trying to search for an apartment. All right. So after they find an apartment, it goes into the next chapter. And the next chapter is called Playdate Pariah. Okay, so this chapter gets really interesting. um, it's basically Wednesday is bringing her son, or at least one of her sons, to like they find a daycare for him finally. You know, they were searching and going through different daycares and trying to find out which one is the best one. And also there's like an admissions process to a lot of these daycares. And a lot of times even elite people, like really, really elite people, can't even get into some of these daycares. Um, but I think the daycare that they got into, I think that her husband's family had a connection to it, so it might have eased things along a little bit better. But they had these not audition process. I think she may have said that phrase at one point, but these different admissions processes for each daycare or, you know, preparatory school or whatever you want to call it, you know, pre-kindergarten, pre-K, whatever you want to call it. So the people who were in charge would set up these scenarios like, okay, there's one toy and there's like a ton of different kids, you know, there's like a crowd of different kids. How would they react? And looking at how her son reacts and what he does. And sometimes the kids would just like, oh, wait their turn. Then other kids would be like, hey, give me this. It's mine. You know, that would be maybe the problem child that they want to exclude from the school, you know, which, you know, they're in the position where they probably do have to start excluding people because so many people want to attend the school, you know. And Wednesday didn't like the admissions process. And if I was in her shoes, I wouldn't like the admissions process either. But I can understand why they do that. However, I think sometimes they might take it a bit overboard when it comes to certain people, because it's like, hey, I'm in a position of power, and some people may have like a nasty or snooty attitude, so you want to kind of like use your power to kind of mess with them a little bit and even deny them admissions to your school. Kind of like a revenge sort of thing or something. But she finally gets to school for her son. But so at this point, she's thinking, everything's all well and good. But then they do, like a lot of people do, play dates, and she's like, well, her son needs to be doing these play dates too. Okay, but why? And really, the play dates are kind of like, okay, it's kind of like socializing, not only for the kids but also for the parents. And like her child was like a play date pariah for some reason. Like some people were not trying to have a play date with her son for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe word got around that her son may be a bit difficult. But yeah, they weren't trying to have a play date with her son. And I think what ultimately led her son to becoming popular as far as play dates are concerned is, like, when Wednesday was at a party, this this man started talking with her, and this man was really elite and prestigious. He had a lot of sway in this particular social setting that they're in, like the Upper East Side. Like, long story short, he has a lot of influence. You know, so then a lot of people were kind of starting to check for Wednesday now, like, and then he had said, "Hey, let's you and let's our kids. How about our kids do a play date together, like really loud?" And other people were like, "What, really?" And then other people were like, "I was trying to get a play date with his kid for a while, but Wednesday got it." So now people are checking for Wednesday now, and trying to get a play date with her, well, her and her kid. So that helped. And then ultimately, he wound up just moving on, and they lost contact with each other. But ultimately, um, he helped Wednesday out. So you can't knock it. All right, next chapter is Going Native. Mommy Wants a Birkin. All right, this chapter was entertaining, definitely. This chapter was about Wednesday, and she getting, like, becoming really obsessed with wanting a Birkin. Like, for some strange reason, like this. She says this is somewhat common in the area she lives in, but like these women would walk down the street with these big Birkin bags, and then like she sees them coming, so Wednesday kind of moves to the side, but then the woman walking moves to the side as well, and then they like Wednesday moves again, but then the woman moves to her side again, and then it gets to the point where like there's no space, and then the woman actually hits her with the Birkin bag as they walk by each other. And then instead of apologizing, the woman has like a smirk on her face and keeps walking. And then I guess that makes Wednesday kind of like angry, but also like, I kind of want a Birkin bag too. Because now she's kind of at the point where she's kind of going native and trying to become a part of this group that she's in. So now she wants to participate, but I don't think she ever actually did that though. But she did want a Birkin bag. I don't think she had actually ever walked down the street and like ran into someone or sideswiped someone with a Birkin bag, thankfully. But then she goes on this journey to get a Birkin bag, and I didn't know. Like, I've heard of a Birkin bag, but again, they ain't really checking for my demographic, and I ain't checking for them, right? But I didn't know that was so elite. Like, there's waiting lists for these bags. There's people who have to train for like 2 years to make these bags. Um, a lot of rich people have been denied these bags. Like, this is some serious stuff here. These bags cost like from $10,000 and upward. Like, whoa. So she goes on this quest to get a Birkin bag and is like trying to find out and, use every connection that she has to get a Birkin bag. And ultimately, I think her husband is able to get her a Birkin bag while he's on a business trip in some Asian country. I think maybe Hong Kong or Singapore. I forget which one. But some Asian country, he was able to get her a Birkin bag. Probably Hong Kong because Hong Kong is a bit of a fashion capital. But Singapore is kind of one too. But anywho, he was able to get her one and she got one and she's happy. But then at the very end of the chapter, she's like at this clothing store and the woman who's helping her, like the worker who's helping her, she like tries her bag and she's looking at it and Wednesday allows her to, try her bag on and look at herself in the mirror. And then the woman was like, oh wow, this is a nice bag. But then she says, oh, there was this woman who came in here a few days ago and she had like um such a better basically like a better bag than this. I'm like, really. And then Wednesday was pissed off by that remark too. But I kind of wish that she would have kind of checked her with that and said what she thought instead of just thinking it. Because she was like, oh yeah, like she was thinking to herself, like, oh yeah, you would never be able to afford a bag like this, even if you work here for 100 years. And while that is, elitist and disrespectful and whatnot, like what she did was like a bit disrespectful. Like that woman should have thought that, but never said that. That's like, especially if she's helping you with, your commission. That's disrespect. So disrespect gets disrespect as far as I'm concerned. All right. Next chapter is Manhattan Geisha. And this chapter, it is about how women, they go to the extreme for like body sculpting and like doing like exercising as well as plastic surgery and hair, like getting your hair done every week, just kind of like doing yourself up and keeping yourself up because you have a reputation to maintain and you got to be able to look on point at all times. When Wednesday also mentioned like when they were dropping off their kids to school, like these women were like decked out and they were dressed to the nines, and they're just dropping their kids off at school. But I'm like, I guess they can do that, So if they can do that, I guess they would, they should. And also they have a reputation to maintain because they're probably married to really wealthy and prestigious husbands, wealthy and prestigious men. So that's probably a part of it too. So yeah, I'm guessing, okay, all right. But, I don't knock it ultimately, it's good that people do have pride in their appearance, so I don't knock that. Right. Next chapter is Girls Night In, and this is basically about how the parties are segregated and whatnot, and sometimes it's like the men in one section of the place and then the women in another section of the place, and they don't really seem to commingle a lot. All right, and the next chapter is called A Xanax and a Bloody Mary, Manhattan Moms on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. And this basically is about how, moms on the Upper East Side kind of self-medicate with wine and pills and whatnot, and how they kind of deal with the stress of being in the position that they're in. Because some people are thinking more money, less problems, but it's actually more money, more problems. And also these women have to deal with keeping their husbands happy while also raising their kids. And also sometimes their husbands cheat on them and they're often not in a position to really do anything about it because their husbands hold pretty much the majority of the wealth in the situation. And it's kind of stressful to deal with that. Plus, they also get help from nannies and other domestic helpers, and they have to make sure that these nannies are on point. Since these nannies are going to be helping them raise their kids and take care of their kids. So basically like rich folks problems. All right. Next chapter is a rainy day, and this chapter was probably my least favorite chapter, at least while I was reading it, but it was an eye opener for me though. It's my least favorite chapter because I feel like it dragged on for longer than it should, and it should have just gotten to the point. Basically, Wednesday was pregnant, pregnant with her daughter. Unfortunately, she wound up having a miscarriage. um, and that was a tough situation for her and her husband to go through. But the women within her social, the social setting that she's in really came together and helped her. Women that, kind of initially gave her no mind, and as well she gave them no mind, but, they came there and they helped and made sure that she was okay. They were there when she needed someone to talk to, when they needed, or when Wednesday needed someone to watch her kids. They were there. You know, um, when they needed somebody to, I guess, even like just help them out with other odd jobs that they might have. They were there. So kudos to them. Kudos to them. Um, and also, this chapter talks about how miscarriages are somewhat common, more common than you think. You know, Women often lose their children, or couples often lose their children more often than you think. And she kind of cites, different statistics here and there throughout the chapter. So ultimately, this chapter was probably the most educating chapter in the book. But it's probably my least favorite just because at some parts I felt like it just dragged on and it should have just got straight to the point. But I did learn a lot from this chapter, definitely. Then the last chapter is summary field notes, pretty much just summarizing things. And then she cites her sources, or at least some of them, and has some acknowledgments at the end. So yeah, that's pretty much the book. I guess I should have said spoiler alert in like the beginning of this video, but I'll post it in the description just in case. But even still, I had some spoilers, and I was still interested to read the book because there's things that I just don't have enough time to touch on that are really intricate in a part of this book. Like for example, like Wednesday often referred to this woman as the Queen Bee, and she was like the head of the PTA at her son's school. And she had walked up to talk to her one time, and she was like, and then the woman responded, "Why are you talking to me?" I'm like, wow, really? But yeah, a lot of people had issues with her, the Queen Bee. But a lot of, like, most people wouldn't really check the Queen Bee because she was in such a position, not because of the PTA thing, but because of her husband. She was in such a powerful position because of her husband. Like, people were afraid to go against her because they might mess up like possible business relationships, and also fundraising relationships too. So oftentimes people just took her crap that she you know threw out there. you know And also, one phrase that came up in like reviews of this book and criticisms of this book was wife bonuses. And basically, a wife bonus is just something that a husband gives his wife in this particular setting, Upper East Side, at the end of the year, based on his, money and bonuses that he may get, and as well based on if he felt like the wife did a really good job, I guess, as far as like raising the kids and domestic duties. And some people were offended by that, and I can see kind of where they're coming from, but ultimately it kind of is like that though. I guess they just don't call it a wife bonus. It's just hey, let's give you a treat. It's kind of like a push present, maybe not necessarily, but kind of sort of reminiscent of a push present, like a woman giving birth and then a husband buys his woman like a really nice gift after she gives birth. you know but some people may feel like, oh, that's trivializing our job as stay-at-home moms by saying, oh, we get wife bonuses or something like that. But then again, some people say that being a stay-at-home mom is a really hard job, and if you really did the math, like these moms do a lot and probably should be paid a lot because they do a lot. you know But congratulations to Wednesday Martin, because MGM has bought the rights to Primates of Park Avenue, her book, y'all. So Wednesday gonna be getting money. This book is gonna be coming to the movie theaters at some point or another. So I'm like, congratulations, Wednesday Martin. Like, I'm like, dang, like I need to take some notes from Wednesday Martin, because the rich get richer, and she gonna be getting money from this book. And I feel like they're gonna kind of sort of maybe make this book somewhat like a spiritual sequel of Mean Girls. I could see that coming off, because like this seems kind of similar to like Mean Girls. But yeah, at one point I think there was a bidding war over this book. I think maybe even up to like 12 different movie companies were trying to bid for the rights to make this book into a movie. I'm like, dang, like, whoa, like, congratulations, Wednesday Martin. Like, I tell you, need to take notes from Wednesday. And that means that I guess Anthropology will be sort of heading to the big screen, but they're going to water it down and make it probably not so anthropological. But still, congratulations, somebody from the neighborhood making it to the big screen. Well, their work making it to the big screen. Because like me personally, I studied anthropology as one of my majors in college, like an undergrad, like a bachelor's degree in anthropology. So that was probably one of the reasons why I gravitated towards this book. And I feel like this book can be used in academic settings too, as well as just for the casual reader as well. It kind of was written along those lines where it can kind of go either way. And I think that was a good, a good strategy for Wednesday to use. But I think I said all I had to say for the time being. So you guys, thanks a lot for watching. Feel free to comment. Feel free to subscribe. Feel free to give me a thumbs up. Your feedback and support are extremely appreciated and extremely valued. Until the next book analysis, adios and goodbye for now.